Yo, what's up, guys? It's Aquagon. I'm back again with another video, and today I wanted to talk about the brand new revival buddies that got revealed so far, and I wanted to talk about how I think that the decks are going to do now that they have these rebees, and just what I think of them in general. So first, I wanted to cover Dragon Knight or Shinsegumi. This is a deck that I actually play. This is the only deck we're reviewing today that I actually play. So the El Quixote Rebe is really good in my opinion. He's like just what I wanted if you saw my Revival Buddy Wants video. He's a size 1, 2000 power, 2 critical, 2000 defense, which if in general that's not really good stats, but his abilities are really good. If you'd call a Dragon Knight, gauge cost is reduced by 1, and if you're equipped with an item, El Quixote's attacks can't be nullified, and the damage cannot be reduced if it's attacking alone. He has double attack, and when he destroys a monster on the opponent's field or deals damage to the opponent, you look at top 2 cards of the deck, put 1 into your hand, and the rest into the gauge, up to 1 into your hand. So you could get 2 gauge, or you could get 1 hand card, 1 gauge, which, in all honesty, it's really good. I think this is one of the things that Shinsegumi needed because Shinsegumi, before El Quixote got revealed, did not have really a good center card. They had a good left card and a right card, being Kondo and I forgot the other card's name, the one that gives penetrate and stops destruction. Um, and stops rest. He's really good. But El Quixote is a really good card for the center. He combos well with the item because the item gives you gauge 1, draw 1, life 1. And El Quixote himself lets you search top 2 and can give you basically +1 hand card, +1 gauge, or just +2 gauge, which is really good himself. It gives you a lot of gauge. For some reason, this deck is really good with gauge, even though it doesn't spend it too much. So far, Shinsegumi is really good now because of this card. Um, I think that the deck has like a little bit of improvement possible if it wants to go a little higher on the tier list. I think right now with this card, the deck is like around tier 1.5 or around tier 1. I don't know about tier 1, but definitely in between 1 and 1.5 because the deck is really good. It has kind of everything it needs now. Um, Really good descent to really good left, really good right. With El Quixote, opponent can't nullify the attacks, so if you're comboing with Kondo, he has 12k power, 3 crit, double attack, penetrate, and his attacks can't be nullified, and his damage can't be reduced when he's attacking by himself. So you could basically just destroy your opponent's center for free if he has enough power, and then the penetrate damage, which can't be reduced because of his ability. So it's a free 3 damage, which is insane in my opinion. I think that Dragon Knights are going to be really strong. I think that also when Spectral Strike gets their rebe, Spectral Strike is going to be really good too. I think that it's going to rival Dragon Knights because they're around the same tier in my opinion. And I think that their rebe is going to be really good. Uh, so yeah, Shinsegumi is really good deck right now, really good card. Next, we're gonna go into MarySue, which is for the wizard attribute. Which the wizard attribute is decent, it just hasn't gotten a lot of cards. So MarySue, pay 2 gauge. If a spell is in your drop zone, card size gets reduced by 2, which is good. 4, 2, 3 stats. When this card enters the field, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Put up to Put up to 2 spells from among them into your hand and put the rest on the bottom of the deck in any order. Infinite Miracle only activates once per turn. The card herself, as in like the stats and the size, is not that bad. It's like decent, but the ability is really good. The thing is that you could use her in any Magic World deck, so Magic World has even better support cards now. I'm expecting the price of this card if we don't get any like reboot announcements for the game or anything like that. I think that this card is going to be a pretty costly card. Just because it could be used in every Magic World deck. Could be used in Drago Phantom Thieves. It could be used in Magigarga. It could be used in Shadow Shades if you're still playing Shadow Shades once they get their rebe. The card is just any 2 spells from the top 5 of your deck. Just think about it. You could grab Nice One, you can grab Abracadabra, you could grab Sephiroth's Lecture. You could just increase your hand cards, or you could just get some defense spells up in there. If you're running MarySue and Mystic Knights, you could get the card that searches 1 sync and 1 item to set up your board. Just Magic World, the spells itself are insane. Magic World is obviously the best spells in the game because it is called Magic World, and it just revolves around spells. but this is even better now. Magic World is definitely looking better now because of this card. Magic World definitely isn't a dead world, though. They had a lot of good decks like Drago Phantom Thieves, even though that fell off. Mystic Knights were really good in Ultimate Unite. They're not really as good now because they didn't get um like the support that they just got in Glory Valiant didn't make them crazier. It kind of made them stick to where they're at. So it's still a good deck. It's not a bad deck. It's just that it's not in tier 1, obviously, which not every deck has to be in tier 1. It's just that it isn't in that tier, which makes it not one of the best. Magic Arga is like 1.5 in my opinion. It's good, but it's kind of lacking a little. If you're playing Magigarga, just Magigarga, then it's lacking, but if you're playing it where you can run all Dragods, Magic World might be even better for you to run than Dragon World just because of the spells and the fact that you could run MarySue in it is just really good. You could just kind of get your deck. You could get exactly what you need in your hand because of this card. I think it's really good. I think it will help with the wizard attribute. I don't know if it makes the wizard attribute viable in the new meta, but I think that it, because we haven't seen everything yet, but I think that it definitely makes the deck a lot better and it helps Magic World a lot. Next, we're going to look at Giant Tanuki. Giant Tanuki got a Rebi. We already have it confirmed that we're getting the Guardians Rebi and the Executioners Rebi, but this card is like a second card for either of those decks. I think if you're running the Guardians slash Executioners build, where you run cards with both Guardians and Executioners in the name, I think that this card is really good. If you're running it in just um if you're just running the card in Executioners or just in Guardians, the card isn't as good, but it's still a really good card in my opinion. I don't really know anyone that's sleeping on this card. A lot of people agree with me that it's a good card. So let's go over the abilities. So pay a gauge, top 2 cards of deck into soul is the call cost, which is good. Doesn't cost a lot of gauge, and you get 2 soul, which is nice. So when a Guardian's on the field attacks, return up to 1 card on your opponent's field to hand, which, everything has anti-bounce now, so it's not too helpful, but you could definitely catch opponents off guard with it if they're running certain decks. Like if they are instantly in Lost World, you could kind of attack. Lost World has some protection. It doesn't have a lot of protection from bounce, especially Vanity. Vanity doesn't have bounce protection. So put up to 1 card from your drop zone into your gauge, which is good for just getting rid of stuff in your drop zone that you don't need in there. Um, and you gain a life, which is okay. When an Executioner is on your field attacks, destroy up to 1 card in the opponent's field, drop 1 of their gauge, and deal 1 damage. Dropping opponent's gauge is really good. It's really viable. If you play EDD, you know that because there's just a card that drops 3 of the opponent's gauge for free if your life is at 1, which is crazy in my opinion. And deal 1 damage to your opponent. He also has penetrate and double attack, which is good. So basically, you get plus 2 gauge, plus 2 life. Your opponent takes 2 damage, drops 2 gauge, and gets 2 cards bounced and 2 cards destroyed, which I think is really good. If we weren't in the meta where there was no such thing as anti-bounce or anti-destruction, this card would be insane. It'd be like way better. But it's still a good card. It's definitely not a bad card. Um, Next, we're gonna talk about. I know that we had Dragon Kid Ricky revealed last night, but I want to talk. I don't really want to talk about him because I think that I don't really know where Raging Spirits is at. I don't play the deck at all. I never played the deck, but I kind of think it's really outclassed by a lot of other Ancient World decks. But we're gonna talk about 8th Omni Deity Lord Grangades Rebi. So he's a size 3 with 20,000 power, 3 critical, and 5,000 defense, and he's a dual dragon monster. I think that this card is actually good. At first, I kind of hated on it, but I think this card is good in general for dual dragons, even though it's like kind of obviously a dead attribute. If they get more support, dual dragons could be really good. And I also think this is a good card in the Omni Lord deck if you still play Omni Lords. Like if you're playing any world with Omni Lord, this is a good card just for defense. I see that the Omni Lord deck is getting really defensive with Burn Nova. Burn Nova made it so defensive. Burn Nova made every deck defensive, but so does Grangades. So I don't know if you could. Oh yeah, the text is in Japanese. Okay, so um, he's an Omni Lord. His call cost is pay 4 gauge and put the top 2 cards of your deck into his soul. When this card enters the field, put up to 4 cards from your drop zone into his soul, so he instantly has 6 soul. If you have 4 cards in your drop zone, 6 soul is really good. Usually in this meta, your opponent could get rid of that 6 soul really quickly, but 6 soul is definitely not something to laugh at. It's really good. You cannot be dealt damage by your opponent's card effects, so you just put him in the center and your opponent can't use penetrate on you or anything. And it's also good if you're running Grace. I know that I talked about Grace in my last video, but Grace, you don't need to use the first effect of Grace if you have Grandgades on the field. Even if you put him on the right, it's still really good to protect your center, but this is definitely a center card where you're just going to run him in the center the whole time and just act as a wall. When this card attacks, put up to one card from your drop zone into its soul and deal 1 damage to your opponent, which is like an okay, which it's a decent ability in general. But then you're gonna look at his stats. You have move, penetrate, quadruple attack, soul guard, and counter attack. This card is really good. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know too much about the meta. I never really been to a tournament before, but from what I know from the game, this card is good. Penetrate with 3 critical is good. Quadruple attack with 3 critical is good on its own. Move for a card that makes sure you can't be dealt damage by opponent's card effects is really good. And then the fact that he is, when this card attacks, put up to 1 card from your drop zone into its soul and deal a damage to your opponent with quadruple attack. That means that turn 1 when he's on the field, not turn 1 of the game, but that means his first turn on the field, he can have up to 10 soul. That's insane. That's like DBS level soul. And the difference between him and DBS is that he doesn't rely on counterattack, but he has it. With 20,000 power too, that kind of breaks through most walls in the game, except obviously Max Dragons. I know I talk about Max in every video, but it's like my favorite deck. But it's just a really good card. In all honesty, I did hate on this card at first, but still. And then it's just a deal 4 damage to your opponent off of his ability. It just free 4 damage even if opponent nullifies your attacks. And then penetrate and quadruple attack, that's 4 attacks by himself with the 20,000 power and 3 crit. So that's basically just 12 damage right there, and then plus 4 damage for every time he uses his ability to put a card from drop zone into his soul. The only problem with this card that I can see is that 1, it has counterattack, which counterattack is like a dead ability, completely dead ability. But it's okay because it's an extra. It's not like they took anything away to give him counterattack. The second problem with this card is that he doesn't have anti-soul drop, he doesn't have anti-bounce, he doesn't have anti-destruction, he doesn't have anti-anything. So you're going to be needing to run Grace if you want to protect him. But this gets to my next point in the video that I want to talk about. Are any of these decks getting cards other than Rebees? Or are they all just getting Rebees? Because so far on the screen, I've talked about 4 Rebees. We also have a Garga Rebee confirmed, a Vanity Rebee confirmed, which we've seen the 2 cards if you want buddyspoiler.com/recent. We've seen the Jackknife Rebee, which is good. I don't really want to talk about that too much because this is more a video on like the underrated decks or the decks that really don't get that much support. And we've seen the Bots Rebee, and we've heard about, I think, 10 other Rebees. So in total, that's the 4 on here, the around 10 we've heard about on Bushiroad's website. I didn't count for that part, I'm sorry. So 10 plus 4, and then the other 4 that I just mentioned is 18. 18 Rebees, which is a lot. So I think that every deck here can get 1 or 2 other support cards, and some of these decks are going to be kind of monsters with this. That's the thing. The Super Warrior set came out yesterday, I believe. Personally, I don't really know if you should be buying anything from that set because of this coming out. This can completely change the game, these decks. Yeah, like if Dual Dragons gets like 3 cards other than Grandgades, if they get 3 other cards, or 2, you can get an item that has anti-bounce, anti-rest, anti-des, and anti-null. You can get a size 0, you could get 2 size 0s, one for the left and one for the right, or you could get like a size 3 that turns itself into a 0 if you have a size 3 already on the field. That can support Grandgades. Maybe those cards can have the anti-rest, anti-des, anti-null, anti-soul drop. And those cards can maybe, when a size 3 on your field attacks, put a card from your drop zone into its soul, into the size 3's soul, or put a card from your drop zone into the soul of any card in the field. That's insane. Think about the amount of soul Grandgades has. It's going to be a tank card. It's going to be a really good tank card, and it's going to work well in the Omni Lord deck, just as a second wall of defense. Because unless you're playing Ancient World Omnis, as in your flag's Ancient World, you're only going to have 1 Burn Nova in your deck. So that's 1 wall to protect you. This is your second. This is a really good wall. It's a really good card. I know that this video has devolved into me talking about Grangades, but I think it's a good card. I think that every deck I reviewed, if they get 2 cards, they could be really good. Tier 1.5. Um, Especially Shinsegumi. If Shinsegumi gets slash Dragonites, if they get 2 or 3 really good cards, like maybe spells, because they have enough monsters. I don't think they need monsters. If they get like 3 spells that are good, they could be tier 1. Just really good spells, they could be tier 1. I think that, let's go to the other card. MarySue could be good. If they get a couple more wizard support cards, I think the deck could be decent. I don't know if it could be tier 1 at all. I think it's like 1.5 at best. Next, Tanuki. The execute, I don't know what we're getting, because the thing is, it's so confusing that we're getting support for Guardians, then support for Executioners, then support for both attributes, as in the Guardians slash Executioners deck, as in where you run both of them at once, is kind of crazy. That means that if you think about it, you can have a lot of support for each deck. Let's say every deck gets 3 cards, other than their Rebi. That means that Executioners has 3 cards, plus their Rebi, plus Tanuki, and then plus the other 3, because you could use Guardians slash Executioners cards in either decks. So that means the Guardians and Executioners could be stacked, which I think Bushy has to watch out for when maybe they designed the cards already, but when they're designing the cards, they have to watch out because they can make something broken right now. If they don't play their cards right, they can make Guardians or Executioners broken, or just the Guardian slash Executioners archetype really broken. And then Dual Dragons. Dual Dragons, this card is good. I want to see Dual Dragons do good. I think they deserve it. It's a slept on deck. It has potential. So that's it for the video, guys. Hope you leave like a thumbs up, subscribe, maybe a comment. A comment would be nice. Just your thoughts on the video or anything I did wrong is really good. Um, so yeah, I think that like not counting the main decks because this is a video on side decks, like not Garga or Vanity or whatever. I think that these decks could be really good. Like every deck that I talked about today, except Dragon Knights, are kind of not forgotten. They're just obviously not used because the decks haven't gotten support in forever. But I think that these decks definitely have potential, in my opinion. I think they could be really good. So yeah, peace out, guys.